It's late, it's cold, and here goes the episode that almost didn't go. Is that a rhyme? I don't know. I think I've never faced like a hardest episode to do. So, uh, hello, this is your friend Carlz with the daily casual conversation, daily, weekly. Let me tell you something. This is the thought process that goes into my mind every time I want to talk about something I like. I like them because certain reasons, right? Or like, I don't know, something about it I like and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about that which I like about something. That is the process. It's simple, it's straightforward, but because I feel it's honest. Like, it's not that scripting is necessarily dishonest or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I don't like doing scripted things. I just do like idea maps, right, of things that I like to talk about. So I have this thing that I really like, and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to say about it. I wanted to do the following movie or movie saga, being Trainspotting and T2 Trainspotting, right? These masterpieces of cinema by Danny Boyle. And I wanted to talk about them for the longest time. And finally, the other day, I decided that that was going to be the week's topic. When I sat down to it, something really strange happened. I really couldn't find the words to express what I wanted to say about the movie. It's odd, it's strange, but it totally happened. During my Spanish episode, basically what I did was just a confession. It sort of read like that, and it sort of like came out like that. So here's what I'm going to do in English. I'm going to try to streamline that confession, right? So, quick update for anyone who doesn't know Trainspotting. This couple of movies about a bunch of Scottish, well, in the first one teenagers and in the second one adults that are addicted to heroin, right? The drug. The first movie is about them just being addicted, like couldn't leave the addiction, right? Having all the problems associated to it while doing this really poignant, that's a word, right? To doing this social commentary on common like 90s capitalist reality, right? And the movie, the later half of the movie is about a heist they try to do to get some money, and they want to do, all of them want to do different things with that money, right? The second part jumps 20 years later. In real life and in the character's life, they all are adults now. They have been through a lot of shit, and then they find themselves together again by the return of Renton, the main character played by Ewan McGregor, right? He comes back after, spoilers, having screwed up his friends at the end of Trainspotting 1 out of the one that I mentioned, the heist, right? He escapes with the money, and then in the second part, he comes back from Amsterdam to find out that everybody has their own life, and somehow no one has a life anymore. That's in a big broad stroke what Trainspotting is about. Now, this is what I liked about it, what I always liked about it, and what I don't know how to explain. What I always love about Trainspotting, to me, it was that in my mind, like without any reflection or anything, this idea popped into my head that Trainspotting was the epitome, right? That's a word, or like the peak, or like the most significant example of 90s nihilism seen in cinema. That is the idea that popped into my mind, and that is the idea that I've lived by since then, right? The problem is that explaining that idea is awfully complicated because it's something that I understand based on a hunch or like a feel or anything, right? But I don't know how to portray it outwards. So if I had to explain it as the effort that I did in my Spanish episode, right? It's not that I like nihilism for the fact that about being a nihilist, right? Like in The Big Lebowski, right? It's not that. That is too simplistic, right? Like if I see these characters, and if you see like a movie about drug addiction, it's even easier just to focus on, okay, these guys are drug addicts because they have harsh lives, which might be true, right? Or these guys are drug addicts because society and the system is too oppressive to them, which also might be true. But here's the thing that the movie does. And kind of like a place of controversy in the movie itself. And since its conception, a lot of people have not hated on it, but like criticized it about being a movie that like enshrines or make drug use or drug addiction look good. Like these are really lovable characters living an adventurous life, right? And people often mistakes that for like the movie defending or being pro drugs. And that is sort of the thing that I see from one point. The point that kind of like it's a little bit embarrassing to accept when you like the movie. To me personally, it was that I wanted to be them. I chose to not do drugs or alcohol when I was a teenager because I was into straight edge a lot, right? And I chose not to do it. And I thought that like excluding myself from these what I like to call chemical pleasures would somehow help me, I don't know, grow as a person, maybe find like some deeper answers to the common plights of the common man. I don't know. I always thought about that. But when I see movies like Trainspotting, I would like to be them, but I would like to be them not because I want to do drugs, but because I want to experience that liberating sensation of the chemical pleasure. Where do I think this whole idea, as I said, about nihilism or nihilism comes to play into the movie? We are living on an age of us as species, right? Where we have sort of like created an effective solution to our main existential plight, which is the search for happiness. In a more utilitarian manner, you can say our like eternal search for pleasure, right? The optimization of the pleasure that we can get out of life. Imagine that we have created, no, when you don't have to imagine it, it exists. That's why there's a whole movie about it. But think about the fact that we have created that in a chemical way. Like how alienating that really is. So if you focus on Trainspotting 1, right? They do this really ambiguous portrayal of addiction that it's nothing short out of genius, right? These characters are not necessarily like completely depressed. They're not extremely depressed or extremely like can you say like under or victimized by money or like by society. Even though they're clearly misfits, they are not like the lower rung of society, the lower strata of society, the lowest of the low. Like you have this image of drug addicts and people that live under drug addiction, living under bridges and like being completely destroyed and like on persons. You can say that, right? On person. Like they have become like wraiths, ghosts, without humanity. That is the idea that you get behind. But by the way the movie is written and by the way the characters are chosen to be presented, in Trainspotting, you don't get that. You don't get soulless life. You get humans. Basically, it's like a. You can see it also like a. In The Dark Knight, when the Joker says, "I'm like a dog searching for a toy," or like, it's not searching. He says, chasing a toy. Like I wouldn't know what to do if I got it. Imagine you got it. Imagine you got the solution in this weird chemical substance that bring you, as I say in the movie, pleasure better than sex, whatever that means. Just imagine that. And the sort of conceptual shock that gives to you as a non-drug taking human being, right? This is the solution. This is the answer to all the riddles, as they would say in Lord of the Rings. We have created chemical pleasure. It's not like we are forgetting the consequences of being addicted. The movie obviously is realistic enough not to ignore that. It would be a joke of a movie if it completely ignored the social effects of that. But this is a really punk rock movie, and the effects on society, or the societal effects or human effects of drug addiction, even though they are like dramatic, they are heavy, they are serious, they are still part of the fucked up system that make you being a drug addict in the first place. That is the big thing. That is the big source of nihilism in the movie. Everything bad about this apparently good thing that you're doing, aka drugs, comes from the same fucked up system that put you into it in the first place. And it pushed you into it in not necessarily an active way, but in a passive way. As I said, these characters are not complete victims of the system. And they are not like enlightened people that somehow found out the secrets of capitalist society, right? They are not. They are just regular guys that, being given the keys to the kingdom, the answer to all the riddles, they take it. And why wouldn't you take it? Why wouldn't you take it? Like, I know I've been in that situation more than I care to admit. But if you were in it, when you see yourself in that situation of complete, like, proletariat, like, defenselessness, that's a word, right? Yeah. If you're in complete, a complete victim of the system, because if you are a proletariat, you are. If you are in that position, like, why wouldn't you take this cape? And that is the main thing with Trainspotting Part 1. As Renton keeps narrating the movie, right? And he goes into these either nihilistic or either critical parts of the script, right? Or in the middle, like the classic live life, right? Which is the trope that, is it a trope? No, it's more like a as a part of the script, right? Or like leitmotiv, you could say, between part one and part two. Live life, pay your bills, live life. I don't know, have kids, live life. If you've seen the movie, you know the line. That live life basically is this call out to reflect on every aspect of your life that is not yours, of which you are basically a victim, right? That in the end you need to either convince yourself that it's okay, or like to have this, you could call it like sort of like a mask, like a wallpaper that you put in front of all these things that are forced upon you, and you gotta create this image of happiness. Of course it's bleak, and that is the source of the dark comedy, which, by the way, this to me is what a black comedy really is, right? You laugh at how pathetic our lives and existences are because it's undeniable and everybody's part of it. Like, this is not just insulting a minority group or anything. No, this is us humans having nothing left to do but to laugh at our own misery. That's grim, but it's funny. And that's when you jump to T2, right? T2, it comes 20 years later, and somehow you could easily expect it to be like an answer. Like, one is very gray, and it's very ambiguous. It's part of the genius of the movie, right? Of not straight up telling you this is good, this is bad, or saying um character goes from A to B and this is it, right? It's not about giving you answers, but more like about giving you questions. Their situation, it's living in this, it's not a paradox, but a point in between many elements of society which force them to be on the outside, on the fringes, maybe. They're not necessarily outcast completely, you know. The grayness of it, with a Y, right? Like gray, is also the greatness of it, in my view. You don't want an answer. Even in part one, when Tommy, the one character that dies of overdose, right? Which ironically was the character at the beginning of the movie that did not do drugs. Even the character that dies, like, their friends are like shit, he died. Like, and none of them are like devastated or anything. It's like he died, and it sort of makes sense, you know. But let's go back to T2. If you go looking for answers in T2, whoa, I just realized T2 is also Terminator 2. T2 Trainspotting, T2 Terminator 2. I think the full name of Terminator 2 is T2 Terminator 2 Judgment Day, is it? Whatever. That's a discussion for another day. You jump 20 years to T2, right? Where all of these characters are older, and they seem to have been overtaken by plot elements. What do I mean by this? Like Big B, like the oldest character, is completely stuck on revenge. Spot is completely overtaken by, you could say, his later life type of redemption arc, right? It's like each and every one of them are stuck into this urge to get a clear sort of conclusion, right? A clear ending to their storylines, which at like at first, if you see it at first, it sort of contrasts with what I've been saying about one and being a more like open-ended movie, right? It's a contrast. This is open-ended, and now I'm gonna offer you an ending. I'm gonna like propose to you a finish to the story. That's how the movie begins, right? Renton comes back to Scotland, like under false pretenses, to come see his parents and to give uh, money back to his friends, right? These are all false pretenses. That spoiler, it gets revealed that Renton is coming back because actually his life in Amsterdam, it has broken down. He has nothing. So if you go character by character, like now we just have four, right? Spud, Renton, and I keep forgetting the name of the blonde guy. Spud, Renton, and Sick Boy, right? How did they end up their gray area of Trainspotting 1? Like Sick Boy now is a swindler, right? He uh, he deceives and cheats money out of people, trying to work on his family's decaying pub. Like Big B is in jail and he escapes only to to take vengeance on Renton. And Spud had a miserable life, or like a miserable life, because he couldn't overcome his addiction. He has a family that he can look after, right? But in T2, they all offer a sort of type of solution, right? Spud meets Sick Boy's girlfriend, or like kind of partner, and gets into the idea of writing their life. Big B gets reunited with his family, and he gets this small sort of like sliver of happiness of having a son and being somehow proud or like inspired for the next generation, right? Sick Boy and Renton get reunited, and they sort of like rediscover the value of their friendship. Even though they both had nothing, right? They both have nothing. They come together to get this plan, to have a project. How many times like you have been left with nothing to do, right? Out of work or anything, and you are with your mates, with your buddies, with your friends, and you're like, okay, let's do this project. Like I'm doing this project right now, right? Let's do a project. Let's have an objective. And this is all good and fun for the first half of the movie. It's like, okay, I like the ambiguity of one. Okay, but I can understand where they are going, right? I can understand that they are getting old and they need an out. They need out of this life. And when I say this life in T2, it has something to do with drugs, but it's not completely dependent on drugs. And that is sort of like the brilliance of it as well. Even though Sick Boy is like a cocaine junkie and Spot technically never stopped consuming heroin in one way or another, like even though drugs are still part of it, the movie doesn't depend on it. So the way I see it, T2 is offering an ending, is proposing an ending, is proposing, like you can say, a possible out to the grayness of the first. And that is the first half of the movie. But in the second half of the movie, T2 does again a turn like that to me, as I said, is nothing short of brilliant. Like Spud finds his refuge in writing their story, which is one of the most meta commentaries you can find in both movies, right? Because there's value in their story. Like, how fucked up is that when your life is trash your life is garbage, but its value in that sort of like looking from outside. How fucked up is that really? Like, you even wonder, like, if I put my life right now in books and stories, would people find it so fascinating as people did with Trainspotting? How cruel is that? How cruel is that your life has no value, like, other than being others people entertainment? How cruel is that? Then you think for an on Big B. He finds a little bit of closure going back to his family, but his son doesn't want to be like him. And he can't let go. He can't let go of vengeance because of how he has been raised. So again, we're not talking about drug dependency. We're talking about some sort of existential dependency. Big B's life has been a life of violence. And having vengeance of Renton is everything to him. And this is not some sort of exaggeration or like some sort of like epic drama, the Odyssey, or like Elysius or something. No, this is a person who's sort of like brought up, right, the way he was raised, either by the system and his family, have given him nothing else. He has nothing else. And of course, you can always say like, oh, people can change and everything. Yeah, sure, that's all good and fair. But you can't deny that people like BB exist everywhere. People that have been completely consumed by violence and by looking at the world in that violent sense. Then you get Sick Boy and Renton, both trying to not necessarily be someone, but like having this at least financial like solvency, right? Like Sick Boy, no, I'm gonna have this project. He keeps talking about projects, about achieving something. He's trying to feel fulfilled and achieved in the same sense that the system tell all of us to be achieved and be someone, have a business, have something. He's trying. and and that is another like piece of cruelty, because they try, and many people that try like them in sort of like illegal kind of like let's say legally gray areas of swindling and cheating people to achieve their dude. There are people that are multi-millionaires that live like that, fucking mafia people and everything. They even make jokes of like real mobsters in the movie, right? And then you have Renton, the one that seemed the most accomplished. He was nothing but living a lie. And he comes back home to his father. His mom is dead. And you realize, or he realized, that those 20 years meant nothing. He couldn't find anything. Again, this is not a statement of universal truth or anything, but like a case of a real person that is like many of us. 20 years go by, you have done a bunch of shit, traveled to different countries, experienced so much stuff, but at the end of the day, you are nothing. Perhaps the only true thing that you had was a friend and your parents. This has a lot to do, by the way, with not many people listen to that episode, but like whatever, my episode about real pain and about the weight and sort of like the curse of past generations, and the fact that every time you live in this society, basically you are told that there are so many ways of being happy, and you sort of get punished if you don't fall into any of those. Because the truth is that there are not infinite possibilities on how to be happy in our society. There aren't. It may that be because of money issues, about reality, culture, whatever. We're not as infinite as we like to be. We like, you can be whatever you want. Like, that is not the case. So by the second half of T2, or even farther enough, right? By the end of it, the very last scene of T2, of Renton listening to Lost for Life in his old teenage room that hasn't changed at all, and the walls become infinite, right? The camera pans out, and the room flashes and goes and goes and goes and never ends. Even if T2 tried to give you an answer, there is none. Perhaps the sliver of hope on the whole story of Trainspotting between the two movies, and the one that I think at the end of the reflection I think I liked, is that it seems that the Lust for Life is on itself everything we have. As I said, it's nihilistic, like in all of its glory, because like the only black and white fact of our existence is that as long as you are alive, you have a choice to be happy. That is the only black and white thing, fact that we have. Once you're dead, you cannot follow into any of our known formats, or like proposals, or like, I don't know, manners of happiness. Who knows? Like, maybe there is happiness after you die. Maybe. But it's something that we cannot tell logically and rationally right now. Even like, what is that movie? There's a movie with Kevin Bacon where is it the Frighteners? No, that's the Michael J. Fox one. That movie where they kill themselves, and then they are brought back, and they experience like being dead for like, but whatever. We don't know what happens after death. We just don't know. So we can't live our lives expecting that there's gonna be happiness after life. We can't. It's a complete paradox. Something that is completely impossible to experience or even to propose. All of this cult of death, or like astrology and the afterlife, it's all just well wishes. So in the end, I don't know if it's a positive thing to think about it like that, right? That it's a bare minimum, like a scraping by fact. As I said, that perhaps being alive is the most we have, and is the most that we can aspire. Just to be alive. It's like, there's no escape to that fact. Not the whole infinite amount of drugs that you want to put into your system. So perhaps the grayness of drug addiction portrayed in Trainspotting is not to say that being a drug addict is either bad or good, or has no repercussions or whatever. Perhaps the grayness of drug addiction in Trainspotting is a way to just reflect on this fact. Reflect on the fact that The real pleasure is just being alive, being open to and not closed to any kind of life, to any kind. And that's why in Trainspotting 2 and T2, they showed us like all characters that have found their niche. Like that teenager that Renton dates, that Renton have sex in one. Now is a lawyer, and like she seems happy, and like Trainspotting is not cheating on traditional lifestyles. It's not. It's just challenging. It's just challenging them, and that is something. That is something that it must be done all the time. All the time. That is something that it's always must be done. You must always be challenging everything, because, as I said, our chances of being happy in this existence and in this society are finite. So you get a challenge, or if you don't challenge, you're gonna get duped. And being duped is probably the shortest way to be broken. Like Tommy in Trainspotting 1. And once you're broken and the lust for life is gone, all that remains is death. And there's no going back from that. So even if at the end of the day the best thing you can aspire to is to listen to Lust for Life in your childhood bedroom, just play it loud, as loud as you can, and dance like him, right? Perhaps in that brief moment, the briefest of moments, you are happy. For like what? How long is that song? I have no idea. So that's how you wait for the next hit. That pleasure better than sex might as well be a rock song, or like a podcast episode, right? An afternoon of, I don't know, Twitch streaming, like share a moment with a buddy like Renton and Sadboy. Tell a story. I don't know. Fuck all. Like who knows? But we gotta find it. And thankfully, we have movies like this that even if sometimes we don't really know what we wanna say about them, it give us the gift of 40 minutes or half an hour of reflecting on it and having some sort of happiness in the moment. And that to me is a good movie. Right? Anyways, that's Trainspotting. I don't know if I covered anything about them or everything. But the fact that these movies make me feel and think like this, it's what I'm thankful for and what I love about them and what makes me want to talk about them. I hope everybody that listens to this episode finds their own lust for life. That is my deep and sincere wish to each and every one of you. Even if nobody listens to this, there's a billion people on Earth, and I wish you all the same. Fuck it. Doesn't cost nothing to wish you all good. And don't do drugs. Or do it, what do I care? Whatever whatever makes you happy, right? Until the next hit of good drugs, the best movies. Thank you for listening and have a good one. Bye bye.